Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Nerd.World. Today we're deep diving back into the Stargate franchise, mostly inspired by the recent passing of the actor Cliff Simon, who to Stargate fans such as myself is best known for playing Lord Ba'al, one of the most amazing system lords, to give him a good description there, I think. It was very sad to hear of his passing recently. I was quite shocked. He was quite young, only 58 years old, and he died in an accident. It's tragic. Speaking as a Stargate fan again, he is one of the standout villains from the entire franchise, from any of the series. And he's certainly my favourite. I really love the actor in other media that I've seen him in other series, other films, and I genuinely felt really bad when I found out that he died. I mean, I don't know the man personally. I've never spoken to him. I've never even seen him at a convention or anything. But it's something kind of sad about a character. How do you phrase that? An actor who played a character that I loved so much suddenly passing is very sad. And I felt that, as I didn't know him, doing a tribute to him, doing his biography or something maybe on my sister channel didn't feel quite right, so I thought, seeing that I have a precedent for doing Goa'uld system lords on this channel, I will do a tribute the way I know how to the late Lord Ba'al, the Goa'uld system lord, who he was and why he was the best system lord, why he was awesome and played by the most awesome character in the show. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Maybe hit the bell icon if you really like the episode. And there is, of course, a full playlist of other episodes, Stargate, Star Trek, as well as other various sci-fi franchises. Please check them out. With all that said, let's get started. Lord Ba'al was a member of the Council of System Lords of the Goa'uld Empire. His exact origins are ill-defined. Exactly when or on what planet he was born are unknown, but he was around during the second dynasty of the Goa'uld Empire, basically when they ruled Earth. He was an underling of Ra in his early days and was known as took on the persona of a thunder god. He was given the administrative duty of making sure that the crops were harvested and large amounts of food were produced by the Tauri in the area which would basically become known as the Fertile Crescent. But his abuse and aggressive nature towards the Tauri did lead to certain uprisings that undermined his power and influence somewhat at that time. However, Ba'al was an insightful and intelligent individual. Now, although he took on the persona of a male figure, this is more to do with the choice of the symbiote and the influence of the host. Technically, a Goa'uld symbiote is neither male nor female, but basically chooses its own identity as how it feels, or what host it initially blends with. It may take on characteristics of that species if that species has a defined gender, male or female. So although Lord Ba'al actually appears as a human male, the actual Goa'uld is a symbiotic creature, serpentine in appearance, that has wrapped itself around his brainstem and taken over the cortical functions of the mind and body. That is technically who Ba'al is. But being the insightful little symbiote that he is, Ba'al predicted, as the second Goa'uld dynasty came to a close, he predicted the rising up of the Tauri on Earth and how he might get killed in that, so he fled Earth with a contingent of Jafar, who should have been loyal to Ra, which earned him the ire of the Supreme System Lord. He managed to carve out a small territory for himself, but was forever going to be on the back foot because Ra was infinitely more powerful than he was. He was able to hold his own for a while, but realized he couldn't take on Ra directly, so he reached out for an ally in the form of Sokar, another more powerful Goa'uld, who he basically, again, pled some kind of fealty to, and while Sokar warred with Ra, Ba'al was able to continue growing his territory while supporting Sokar. Sokar considered all of Baal's territory to be his own, and Ba'al to be basically a governor of that territory. But while Sokar was distracted with his on and off constant wars with Ra, only supported lightly by Ba'al, Ba'al controlled an increasingly large amount of space and Jafar and fleet, until eventually he declared independence, and Sokar saw this as an act of rebellion, just as Ra had done, and he sent a fleet of ships to retake his lost territory and kill Ba'al. Ba'al at this point showed how ruthless he can be, when he deployed only a couple of ships to intercept this attack, but these two vessels were not there to directly engage Sokar's fleet. What they did was, using some advanced gravitational technology, basically his manipulation of black holes and other gravitational fields that Ba'al was an expert in, he was able to collapse two stars and destroy entire systems, including the fleets of Sokar, but this resulted in the deaths of over 60 million human slaves that were in these systems, an act which Lord Yu would deem Ba'al a sore loser. To kill so many for no reason. Lord Yu, another Goa'uld system lord, surprisingly honourable one, who had some positive influences on the human subjects that he ruled over, although again, positive is a slight with him, but slight might be all you can get with the Goa'uld. He considered this a dishonourable and distasteful act. But it did mean that Sokar decided that engaging Ba'al directly was not really worth the effort, and the two signed a peace treaty and continued their alliance against the forces of Ra. And eventually, Ba'al, with this increased power, would ascend to the full rank of System Lord and become part of the Goa'uld Council of System Lords, although there was an uneasy peace between him and Ra that would eventually be founded. Again, that's pretty much the status quo for the Goa'uld System Lords. This would be the norm for about the next 1,000 years, until the unexpected and supposedly accidental death of the System Lord Ra, the supreme System Lord of the Goa'uld Empire, the one Goa'uld that kept the peace with all the others because he was so much more powerful than them all. Ba'al, amongst others, like Apophis, would quickly move to secure the now unstable territory formerly controlled by Ra, as many of his servants would look to either take power for themselves or look for a new master to protect them from others who were equally dangerous, or old enemies like Apophis. Ba'al would quickly annex large amounts of territory, massively increasing his own power and prestige amongst the Goa'uld. But also this power grab and everything that would come along with it led to multiple amounts of infighting with the Goa'uld, which was one of the inherent problems of the Goa'uld Empire, their nature to fight one another, particularly System Lords, who were mostly all driven mad through their own ego, avarice, power, and also through the use of the sarcophagus technology that slowly corrupted the mind. Ba'al, however, didn't seem to be as susceptible to this, as he seemed to be sharp-witted and intelligent, and although he would often gloat, like many Goa'uld, make mention of being a god, he almost did it in a tongue-in-cheek way when talking with the Tauri, because he was fully aware that them, and even when talking to the Tok'ra, that he was not a god. This was even something that would be mentioned in one of the meetings of the Council of the System Lords, where they would mention the fact that they're all pretending to be gods and they can't keep up that illusion forever if they are allowing people to defeat them. This was one of the reasons that Ba'al would actually allow Anubis back into the Council of System Lords, or at least vote for it. By this point, he had ascended to the position of maybe not leader of the Goa'uld, but with the loss by that point of other powerful systems like Apophis, which is another story, he was representative as sort of the voice amongst equals, in theory. He was the strongest Goa'uld. But, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, his first contact with the SGC, with the Tauri, when the Goa'uld would eventually learn that they were the ones who had killed Ra. This gave him no respect or anything for the Tauri. They'd simply done him a favour, but they were still humans and they were technologically inferior, but they were getting advanced enough for them to be a problem. So like other Goa'uld systems, he wanted the Tauri destroyed, or at least reconquered, before they become too strong and become a potential threat to the Goa'uld. Now, his first encounter with them was actually with a Tok'ra that had taken possession of Colonel Jack O'Neill and used him to help to try to free a slave girl. that was in possession of Lord Ba'al. This Toker had formerly infiltrated Ba'al's inner circle. He would torture, kill, and resurrect Jack O'Neill multiple times, again demonstrating his knowledge of gravitational technology at the secret compound, where he was still researching and developing new ways to manipulate gravity as a weapon or other devices, and exploit it for other uses. Later, he would also again be instrumental in various conflicts across the Goa'uld Empire, and even occasionally an ally to the Tauri in their war against the Replicators in particular, with one of the most unsettling moments being when he worked closely with Colonel Samantha Carter and her father, who was a Toker of course, and we even wish them good luck, which was meant in a very genuine way, which was a deeply unsettling thing. Which then leads us to the later stories of Ba'al. He, as the Goa'uld systems lords, were slowly tearing each other apart, which had been a sort of inevitability. Ever since the death of Ra, they were slowly ripping each other to pieces. The Toker's greatest fear is that one of their objectives was to prevent the Goa'uld from unifying and becoming a single power, allowing one system lord to take absolute authority. Because although Ra technically was the leader of the Goa'uld, although he was stronger than any other individual system lord, or maybe even perhaps a collection of them, he was not supremely powerful. He wasn't so overwhelmingly powerful that he could actually take on and defeat the forces of every other system lord. But he was strong enough to make sure that they didn't challenge him. But the fear was that someone like Ra, or worse, someone like Anubis or Sokar, would become the supreme leader of the Goa'uld. Apophis came very close, as did Anubis. But no one system lord truly ever became the head, the figurehead, the leader, the only one and only remaining Goa'uld. This would happen a little later with Ba'al, however, towards the end. As the system lords tore themselves apart, and the Jafar rebellion was taking hold, the Replicator invasion was the final nail in the coffin. The Goa'uld may have been able to survive these other things, but the Replicators wiped out the other system lords, and as far as we know, Ba'al was the only one left standing, meaning he was the only leader of the Goa'uld left. But the resurgence of Anubis, who was so powerful that he was able to even keep Ba'al under thumb, at least for a time, meant that realistically Anubis was in charge until he was again defeated by the Tauri in SG1, and Ba'al once again became the supreme leader. In order to try and carve out a new territory and save the Goa'uld Empire, Ba'al began stealing Stargates. He used Anubis' technology to create a new isolated Goa'uld Empire. He also used Anubis' Cull Warriors and other advanced technologies such as Asgard beaming technology that had been able to get from the Asgard and other various sources to create a technologically even more powerful Goa'uld Empire. This was, although a much smaller, reduced in size Goa'uld Empire. He still had loyal Jafar, he had the Cull Warriors, he had a fleet, but the rise of the Tauri, the war with the Replicators, the rise of other factions such as the Lucian Alliance was all taking its toll on the Goa'uld. One of the other strategies he then resorted to was cloning, and he produced multiple clones of himself, partly as a distraction to prevent assassination, and also to basically make himself seem omnipresent, to make the other, not Goa'ulds, because they're not that stupid, but particularly the Jafar, think that he was a god, as a god is everywhere. And that's basically the perception he was going for at the time. He would even make a base on Earth, feigning that he wanted to retire in peace to Earth and live out the rest of his days, as long as they wouldn't bother him. This, of course, is not what happened. The Free Jafar came after him, as did the Tauri, and he was driven from that plan. Later, he would also do things like manipulate time itself, create an alternate timeline in which he used future knowledge of people like Teal'c, who wanted to free the Jafar, making all kinds of promises. He predicted Ra's death. He allowed all these things to happen, and then he manipulated events so that he became the supreme commander of the Goa'uld, that is, until he was betrayed by his queen, who impaled him with a sword and took over his little empire and began a planetary bombardment of Earth that he was trying to subjugate in a sort of political manner, which was a very unusual strategy for the Goa'uld, but would have still resulted in the Tauri being subjugated ultimately. He was ultimately a genius, a brilliant tactician, strategist. He was also a political player, and a survivor. Ba'al was the last of the System Lords standing. Eventually he poisoned all of his other clones, so that effectively he was the only one left, or at least possibly the only one. He may actually have been one of the clones. But eventually the last remaining Ba'al was removed from its host by the Tok'ra, and so ended the rule of the System Lords. Of course, there had been multiple alternate timelines, such as him going back to 1939, where he got shot, which may have been the original Ba'al, not one of the clones, and it may have been one of the clones that then poisoned all the others, and then was the one that was ultimately captured and then removed by the Tok'ra. That's all very complicated, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, almost Doctor Who level story, which I think may actually deserve its own video to cover all the nuances of the convoluted timelines that he kept messing with. But there we have Lord Ba'al, one of the most powerful, certainly the most devious of all the System Lords, and fascinating juxtaposition against power-hungry System Lords like Apophis and Ra, blatantly malevolently evil like Anubis or Sokar, and somewhat more honourable System Lords like Lord Yu Wang Shang, or the more cruel and callous ones such as Kronos. He had elements of all of these: the ego, the power-hungry, the lust for power of any Goa'uld you'd expect, but he also it was balanced with a sense of intelligence and a powerful mind, which some of the other Goa'uld lacked. I mean, certainly they were intelligent individuals, the System Lords, but many were just in power because they were powerful, not because they were necessarily intelligent. Ba'al was not just a strategist and a politician, he was also a scientist, which made him distinct amongst the System Lords, that when a new technology was being developed, Apophis wasn't doing that, it was one of his underlings. A lot of the time it was actually Ba'al who did a lot of the R&D work on the new technologies. So he really was a leader amongst the Goa'uld, but him becoming the supreme leader of a singular Goa'uld empire, which he likely would have got rid of the feudalistic system the Goa'uld had and installed instead a more rigid autocratic system, which would have meant the Goa'uld Empire would be less likely to descend into the sort of, well, the feudal lordship system, which resulted in different underlings of System Lords having too much power and becoming System Lords themselves, basically creating new nation states of the Goa'uld Empire. It would have stayed a singular nation state for a very long time if he'd had his way, and the galaxy's very lucky that that didn't actually happen, with the intelligence and threat and ruthlessness that this System Lord had. I mean, what would have happened if it actually managed to have kept Adria as a host, which again is another story, when a Ba'al clone managed to get Adria as a host. Great episode, but would have been a disaster for the galaxy, probably a disaster for multiple galaxies, probably would have been a disaster for the Ori as well. But anyway, there we have Lord Ba'al. As I said at the beginning of this video, this wasn't actually slated in my list of episodes I was going to do. It was brought on by the fact that Cliff Simon recently and very tragically passed away, and I wanted to do a video about his character, which is probably going to lead me into doing more of these, as I think the only System Lord video I'd done before this was Camulus. But, that said, tell me in the comments below which was your favourite Goa'uld System Lord, and why is the best System Lord Ba'al. Like, share, subscribe, and bye bye.